Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Caleb Kidcoy, and I'm here with Scott Christensen and Scott Johnson to talk a little bit about the power of legacy and what that means and why we do what we do and why we serve the people that we serve. And I feel so blessed and so fortunate to be with these two gentlemen today to kind of glean from their lifelong wisdom and experiences and talk to you guys a bit about why we created this alignment and why Prosperity Producers Alliance was birthed. And so, gentlemen, in over the next few minutes, let's just talk a bit about, first of all, I'd like to ask, what does legacy mean to you, Scott Christensen, and how does it tie into why you started doing what you're doing? And then obviously you and Scott Johnson go back a few decades, and we can talk about how you guys met and that alignment that brought you together.
Well, for me, legacy is really the heart of everything that I do. I believe that the family unit holds the key to wealth creation, wealth preservation, and I'm committed to the idea of creating generational capital. Not only there's all kinds of capital. There's financial capital, which we want to pass on from generation to generation, but there's also intellectual capital. You know, some of the wealthiest families on the planet make it a point to make sure that they pass along the intellectual capital that has been gleaned over generations. You know, the Rothschilds is a family that comes to mind. They've been around for a very, very long time, and part of their process is to uh, not only pass along the family capital, the financial capital, but pass along the intellectual capital. So when they do something and it works, they record how it works and why it worked and what they did. If something doesn't work, they make sure that that's chronicled so they don't make those same mistakes again. But then there's also another form of capital, and it's what I call, or what's referred to commonly as relationship capital. And that capital is really, really powerful. And one of the things that we bring to the table is the idea and the process of helping families understand all types of capital, the financial, the intellectual, the relationship, and there may be two or three other types of capital that we haven't even figured out yet. But at the end of the day, it's utilizing everything in unison in such a way to create the maximum amount of value for families, uh, uh, create the greatest financial certainty for families, and really elevate the families from uh, a a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is one of the things that we try and do. So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
Powerful. Scott Johnson, you want to piggyback on that? What does legacy mean to you and why is it important?
Well, Scott Christensen and I, as you mentioned, have been together in various and sundry ways for almost 2 decades. And so I say amen to what he just said. But for me, this all is about family. And when we say family, everybody takes it differently. I get that. But family, I see family as lasting. I can still remember a friend of ours, Ted Dodge, gave me a paper 10 years ago called The Right Plan. It's a 100-year plan. It's a plan for 100 years. What does your family look like 100 years from now? What does the finances look like 100 years from now? In other words, it's not about planning for retirement. It's about planning for your children and grandchildren's future and having that in mind as you make decisions. So for me, legacy, the word legacy has to do with what am I leaving behind that allows me to be remembered. I want to be remembered, but also to leave something behind that legitimately made a difference, that my family was better off because I left a legacy, which is completely different than leaving an inheritance. Scott pointed all that out. There's different kinds of ways we leave a legacy, and some of it's emotional, some of it's social, some of it's spiritual, some of it's financial. But combined, that idea of leaving a legacy that changes the world, and again, it's kind of dreamy, but my kids were raised with this crazy idea: you're here to change the world. You're here to change the world. It means change you, but you're here to change the world. And for me, passing on a legacy to a family or with a family is world changing. So that's kind of why I'm a dreamer. So
I love that, Scott Johnson, and kudos to both of you, because legacy is dreaming, thinking bigger than we have before. And I think we can all witness and attest to the fact that a lot of families are not thinking multi-generational. They're so consumed, I guess, with living, right? Surviving. Let's be transparent here. Doing what they have to do to survive, that they've not yet been taught to shift their mindset to think cross generationally. We're all familiar with the statement: a good man or woman leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so when you talk about how we're going to be remembered, I don't think people give enough merit to that. And they're not thinking, okay, how am I going to be remembered when I'm gone? Whether that's today, tomorrow, 10, 20, 50 years from now. And what does it look like for the people that I leave behind? And so I think there's a sense of urgency, wouldn't you gentlemen say, that we all share, along with this powerful family values, and getting people to understand you're going to have to shift the way that you think and the way that you view things in order to position yourself in a place that's not only better for your immediate family, but for the generations that follow. And so let's talk about these tools a little bit that you guys have utilized. What has been, Scott Christensen, what has been some of the most impactful moments that you've had in this discovery process? Because obviously there's moving parts and elements to this, but talk to us a little bit about a highlight moment that was impactful in your discovery process that you love passing on and sharing with your clients and your family members.
Well, I can tell you, it really wasn't necessarily a moment, and it's kind of who I am from a very early age, early in my life, um, early in my marriage. I started thinking about what would happen if I wasn't here, and so I started with providing right off the bat. I bought life insurance, for example, because I wanted my wife and my unborn child to be taken care of at the time. And then as our family grew, I wanted to make sure that there was plenty of funds. But I also realized that, you know, going to work and putting the time in and having a good job, it's all important, but it can all be taken away in a very short period of time, either through death or disability. And I got involved early on in the planning process of moving forward financially. What I found was over a long period of time was that there are many things that most people, including myself, think to be true about money that turned out over time to not be true. And so I began to look around at different ways of doing things, different ways for planning for the future. And I exposed myself to a lot of different thought processes. And over time, I began to integrate those and coordinate those thought processes into a more cohesive system, if you will. So we created something called the family banking system. We created something called the family legacy system. And one of the things that I believe is lacking for most people today is a sense of capability, a sense of control, a sense of optimism and abundance. And what I mean by that is that the vast majority of people that that we run into they're dealing from a for lack of a better term, a scarcity mentality. Is I can't do that because I can't do this because I don't have any money, and I don't have any money because, or I'm in debt, and I'm in debt because there are circumstances that happened that were beyond my control, and they may have been beyond your control, but how you react to them and what you do about that going forward is really the important part of it. And so for me, it's helping individuals and families shift their paradigm, look at things a little differently. I tell people the economic future that we're living into, I believe, is far different than anything we've experienced in the past. I personally believe we are in a new financial paradigm that requires an entirely new way of thinking.
Mhm.
We're not living into the past 40 years. We're living into a brand new 40 years. That everything is. It's not that you can't base some of your thinking on past history, but you have to understand that that is not the history that we're living into, and so we need to shift how we look at things and how we do things, and be open to it, and put ourselves in a position to take advantage of. I mean, I tell people, listen, there are no natural resources on this planet, and people look at me like, no, you've lost your mind. And granted, there is air. We have to have air to breathe. I get that, and we need water. If you don't have water, we're not living very long. But by and large, there are very, very few natural resources, and by that I mean without human ingenuity, a tree is just a tree.
Hmm.
Once human ingenuity comes into play, that tree can be cut down. It can be turned into all kinds of different things. And so the human, the individual, is the greatest natural resource this planet has ever created. And for those of you who believe in a higher power, we can even go there. But the bottom line is that human beings have this unbelievable capacity to innovate, and by through innovation and cooperation and sharing the various types of capital, the intellectual capital, for example, civilizations have been built with that, and that's where I think we're at today, is creating that process of educating people about just how powerful they are, financially, intellectually, etc.
Hmm. Scott Johnson, what would you add to that?
Another amen. Thank you, Scott Christensen. That's but let me just quickly go back and share. You ask about a point. Was there a point where you saw a shift personally? And there was. For me, when I met Scott Christensen, we started down this path of abundance versus scarcity, and that was a new phrase for me. It was new. It was a new thought process, and it changed my paradigm because I began to realize I'm a Christian. I believe clearly in the fact that we have an example. When the scriptures talk about Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man, Jesus grew in 4 ways, at least minimally, in 4 ways that I'm trying to grow, and therefore I would try and teach other people how to grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Those are 4 ways: intellectual, social, spiritual, emotional. They all fit, but they fit inside of a context for me, and that context is abundance versus scarcity. The world we live in teaches scarcity. There's so much pie, you don't get any. There's so much milk, you don't get any. There's so much money, you don't get any. I'm sorry that the job doesn't work for you. Whatever it is, scarcity versus abundance. There's enough and to spare. That's the way I see it. There's enough and to spare. There is more than enough in every situation that we can provide abundance mentality rather than scarcity mentality.
Hmm.
That teach people what you've been taught, and that is that there is no end to what you can do. There's no end to your potential. Believe in yourself comes from abundance mentality. We live in a day when there's so much depression, so much despair, so much anxiety, so much lack of self-esteem. And for me, that moment of realizing I could do anything, I can do anything, and I can teach anybody how to do anything as long as we both have the same mentality. And that mentality is abundance mentality. We're going to grow together. Anyway, that's where I went after listening to what Scott had to say.
Mm-hmm. Solid feedback, gentlemen. And it reminds me, as we're creating these concepts, or as we're conceptualizing these processes, if you will, in the middle of that, we're building this community. We're building a community of like-minded people who share in these values and who recognize the importance of having an abundance mindset. Now, I was raised with quite the opposite. And I saw how it affected my own family dynamics as I was being raised, right? And I know the amount of work and effort and due diligence it took personally to shift and break those strongholds within my mind, that stinking thinking, I like to call it, right? That really was crippling and paralyzing the ability that I knew was always within me. And one of the greatest moments I had as a young man in my early 20s, I think I had just been married, and I had my first child, was on the way. And of course, I remember all the fears that, we as dads initially feel when we're first becoming fathers or whatever. But I was counseling with a gentleman who is a pastor, a minister from Poland. And he looked at me and said, Caleb, everything that you need to succeed is already resident within you. And for me, because of the way I was raised and my thinking, right, that it was such a new concept, and it liberated me in so many ways, because I went, oh, wait, I'm not right. So often we're out there looking for where's the answer? Where's my solution? Right? Where's this thing that I have to do, that I have to find to make me successful, to make me feel good? Where's that dopamine hit? And yet we realize it's all resident within us already. And so I love what you guys both are talking about. And so as we go back to talking about this community that we're building, I feel so grateful to be aligned with folks who share those values, who understand the importance of the strength and solidity of the family unit. It goes without saying, the family unit, not only in America, but around the world, is under attack. It's under assault, right? Obviously, we know that divorce rates are higher than they've ever been. The breach, the gap sometimes between parents and children. And so I love that what we're building here, gentlemen, is a community that's pulling family units together, that we're reaching out cross-generationally and saying, come and be a part of a community that values you and that values the things that you value, and will show you a different way of thinking, a different way of handling your money, a different way of building a legacy that will endure, that will be sustainable. And so, Scott Christensen, as we talk about this, what right now most excites you about the potential of what this can be, or what this will grow into, let's say months and years down the road?
Well, let me just sidetrack for just a moment, and I'll come back to that, because as you both were talking, I was thinking, here's the reality: we live in the greatest period
Hmm.
of creative destruction that has ever existed on the planet. Now, what do I mean by that? It's out with the old, in with the new, at a ever increasing pace. I grew up as a kid listening to records, and then records were later replaced by cassette tapes, or eight-track tapes, excuse me. Then those were replaced with cassette tapes. Then those were replaced with CDs. And then we went to iPods, and now everything is streaming. Tremendous shift over the last 50 years from how it was to how it is today. And that's what people are dealing with on a massive scale. Everywhere we turn, there is creative destruction. And back to this idea of human ingenuity, just a very simple example. We're a lot of times we're concerned about quote an energy crisis. We're going to run out of oil. Back in the 70s, I was in college when there was an oil embargo, and there was all kinds of issues. There were lines at gas stations, etc. But here's what's really true: is human ingenuity has created a scenario that, quite frankly, my brother-in-law has a car that gets between 30 and 50 miles to the gallon because it's a hybrid. Human ingenuity has done that. Now, we think that we can go to electric cars, and maybe we will in the future. But this idea, we've taken. I owned a car. My first car got 4 miles to the gallon. 4. And Scott's probably the same way. 4 or 5 miles to the gallon. Today we get 30 or 40. So we don't have a fossil fuel shortage. There is plenty of it because of human ingenuity. we have, as Scott Johnson mentioned, enough and to spare. Meaning, with human ingenuity, we're gonna solve all these problems going forward. Now, how does that make me excited today? The excitement is that we are going to overcome all these challenges because human ingenuity will do that. But in the process, what we're hoping, at least what I'm hoping, is that we identify with, or individuals out there that we approach will begin to identify with us in such a way that they want to join with us in the process of creating greater prosperity for themselves and their families. That's hence we named the company the Prosperity Producer Alliance, meaning we want to create prosperity. There's Years ago, I was talking with somebody and we had a conversation about, are you a producer or a consumer? Producers produce value. They exchange value. They create value. Consumers are constantly consuming. They're constantly now. By the way, it's interesting. We are all labeled consumers, which I never thought about it until not too long ago. That's maybe as a derogatory term. It's a demeaning term. Because yes, we are consumers, but there is a way to switch that process around. You can't help but consume things. I mean, when you get in your car, you're going to go down the road. As you're driving down the road, you're consuming a fossil fuel, gasoline, etc. When we eat, we consume the food, and we're not getting it back, right? But producing is about creating value. It's about a value exchange, and I think that's one of the things that has happened with the three of us here as we've come together, is that there is a value exchange. Caleb, you bring your unique capabilities to the table. Scott Johnson brings his unique capabilities. I bring mine, and we've integrated those in such a way that we are now. This is a value exchange. There is a when I say value, you don't always create money when you create value, but most of the time, value creates an income. Most of the time, we exchange our intellectual capital or our unique capabilities. When we're exchanging something that we have of value, or that we have that is of value to somebody else. And so that's kind of where that's what excites me, is helping individuals and families going forward recognize the tremendous amount of value that they bring to the table, and then, for lack of a better term, monetizing that value in such a way that they receive compensation for what they bring to the table. So that's got me very excited. I think that's something that most people do not understand and have never thought of.
Powerful. Scott Johnson, what gets you excited? I mean, I know I'm getting excited here. What gets you excited?
Part of what gets me excited is being on here with two guys who get what I'm trying to do. And what I mean by that is, I love working with people who could say it. They may not say it this way, but I like to work with faith, not fear. And we live in a fearful world. And this group is designed to find people who want to work by faith, not fear, and recognize the future is as bright as you want to make it, and that the opportunities here, everything we're talking about, all the different stuff we're talking about with legacy and family banking and all the stuff that we do financially, combined with emotionally, socially, spiritually, you put all that together with a group of people, there's nothing that group of people can't do. We can change the world. So for me, the idea of a future with people who love to live by faith, not fear, is enticing. It gets me excited, and it gets me excited to share it with other people. That's where I see this whole thing going, sharing it with other people who then share it with other people. It's a multiple effect. This isn't addition. This is multiple effect. So that's the way I see it.
Wow.
So, and Caleb,
Go ahead,
just going to jump in real quick. You said something earlier and you repeated it again. And that's this idea that if you change if you assimilate some intellectual capital from somebody else and it impacts you in such a way that it causes a shift in your behavior, then you literally do change the world. The world is different because you now are different. Now, the next part of that is how much of a ripple effect can that shift or change have? And I think that's what again, I'm very excited about the idea that the ripple effect. I was talking with somebody the other day, maybe it was one of you, where was talking about the story of the fellow throwing the starfish back into the ocean after a storm that had been washed up, and it says, hey, you can't save them, you can't save them all. And the individual responded, yeah, but I made a difference for that one. I saved that one. And that's really what's important to me, is that seeking out those individuals that not only want their lives to be different, but they want to make a difference in the world, even if it's just their little world, their little, internally, or their family. Because once we start doing that, we may not be able to save everybody. We may not be able to shift everyone's thinking, but we can shift hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of people's thinking going forward. And that's very exciting to me.
It is. It really is. And I love that analogy and example, because not 2 weeks ago, my kids and I were at the beach rescuing starfish. And it does. It starts with the one. Well, we heard the story about somebody who left the 99 and went after the one. I don't know. It's a distant memory in my mind, maybe. But faith over fear, guys, is what we're talking about here. And we've watched fear blanket our planet over recent years. And regardless of what you believe or where you stand, the bottom line is that faith and courage overcome fear. And so you have to be in an environment surrounded by people whose faith is stronger than their fears. Are we all going to experience fears and moments of panic and hesitation and question? Are we on the right path? Sure. But do we live in that, or do we shift our mindset to say, all things and anything are possible if I surround and align myself with the right people in the right place at the right time? And I believe that time is absolutely, undoubtedly right here and now. Then I have the capacity and the ability to do what's not been done before, to accomplish, the dreams, the desires, the goals that maybe I left on the shelf, that I set on the sidelines, that I sacrificed years ago. We want you guys to begin to dream again. We want the dream to come alive within you again, that the possibility and the potential is there. No, we don't know what the future holds, but at the same time, we are creating our future, and together we're building a powerful legacy. Gentlemen, it's been a joy as we continue this conversation on. We're going to give you guys more details and more insights into what we're doing, this community that we're building, and how you can share in the value as you bring in value with your own unique talents and abilities. So until next time, thank you for tuning in.
All right.